Hello and welcome back to Bengal Bites, the podcast about the Cincinnati Bengals from a real, honest perspective. I'm your host, Derek. This is episode 121. This is the Week 16 preview episode where we're going to be talking mostly about the matchup against the Miami Dolphins coming up in Miami, but also there's just been so much going on in Bengals news this past week. There's so many things to cover, so many things to discuss, but we'll try to hit all those quickly in this episode. But it's been a rough week, I'm not going to lie to you. It's not a good feeling when the team is eliminated from playoff contention with 3 games left to go. And even though Zac Taylor has maintained the fact that the team's going to finish strong and try to get momentum and all that stuff for next year, I understand that they don't want to lose the game. That's not what they put all this time and effort into. They're not going to intentionally try to lose. You hope, but with the gambling, you never know. And after last week's performance, unprecedented. Joe Burrow never had been shut out in his NFL career up until last week. 24-0 loss at home to the Baltimore Ravens. It's hard to say if that was just a one-off game because it was so brutally cold. Temperatures, 10 degrees, wind chill, below zero. They were already basically out of it. The Ravens had a lot more to play for. They were upset about getting embarrassed at home on Thanksgiving, so they were all fired up to come out and get revenge against the Bengals. But the Bengals just didn't look good. Joe Burrow didn't sound good in his press conferences after the game, during the week. But even the thing that almost got swept under the rug was the real distinction between Joe Burrow and Zac Taylor in their press conferences, just in terms of, as usual, Zac Taylor never gives a real answer to anything. He's always just giving you a lot of cliche answers, saying what he has to say to protect the organization. There's never any real honesty or truth out of what Zac Taylor says. And then you have the complete opposite out of Joe Burrow. He's so honest, it's shocking to people sometimes. And he takes long pauses to think about what he's going to say. He chooses his words very carefully. And that's just the complete opposite of Zac Taylor. Sometimes you wonder, does Zac Taylor even think about what he's saying at all? Because there was a reporter who asked Zac Taylor a question, a direct question, prefaced it by saying, we don't have the opportunity to speak to ownership or the front office, so we have to ask you whether or not your contract situation is going to be evaluated at the end of the season, or do you have 2 additional seasons, as has been reported in the news. Zac Taylor didn't want to answer any of those questions, and he's not under oath. He's not required to answer. But then he just said, well, you'll have to, that's the question for ownership. You have to ask them. And the reporters have heard this before, and so they were ready for it this time. They pounced. They said, aha, well, like we just said, we don't have any opportunity to ask ownership, so we don't have any ability to ask them. And he just kind of looked back and said, well, okay, sorry. And gave him that Zac Taylor grin that everybody loves. So not long after that, probably just coincidence, there is a digital billboard taken out on I-75 that says, fire Zac, fire Duke, save Burrow. And it's got some burner Twitter account, so it's not anybody putting their real name on it. But Zac Taylor did not have any comment on that either. You won't be surprised. He didn't want to discuss the billboard calling for him to be fired. I wonder if Zac Taylor has to drive by that on his way to work, or like, think about if his, I'm sure his family has to drive on I-75 occasionally. They're going to see a billboard that says, fire our dad. It's a weird situation in Cincinnati right now. the reporters, they don't have any football questions to ask. So now they're asking Joe Burrow questions about, well, to be fair, Joe Burrow made a good statement about how he feels like everybody, I guess people like me who are concerned for his long-term health, he was saying everybody doesn't want him to play and is trying to keep him from playing, and he just wants to play football. So I feel guilty saying that Joe Burrow shouldn't play, but there's 3 games left. They're eliminated. I understand he's a professional athlete. He gets paid a lot of money to go out and be an entertainer, put on a show for people who buy his jerseys, come to the game. 75% of the people in Cincinnati are probably wearing Joe Burrow jerseys. So there's a part of him that has a feeling of pride to go out and represent. And like he said, be consistently great like he has the expectation of being. Hopefully, there was some talk about Joe Burrow had a little bit of a limp when the reporters saw him walking through the locker room this week. We don't want any of those injuries to get aggravated. And we saw, star players for a lot of teams go down with serious injuries, like Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs last week tore multiple knee ligaments. He had surgery on an ACL and an LCL that were torn. He's going to be out for who knows how long. Micah Parsons, the pass rusher for the Green Bay Packers, he tore his ACL. So I'm not trying to speak anything into existence, knock on wood, but those are the type of injuries that Joe Burrow definitely does not need, especially in a season that's already lost. They're not going to be able to make it to the playoffs or the Super Bowl. So they're just kind of getting statistics, going out there for, like I said, the pride, putting on a show, and that's all great, but I don't necessarily know. You got to think long term eventually. I know Zac Taylor says they want to win. Winning is important. But as we've established, Zac Taylor's not going anywhere. Al Golden's not going anywhere. Duke Tobin's not going anywhere. Zac Taylor made it perfectly clear. He said he has, quote, extreme confidence. Those were actual words that Zac Taylor said. He said he has extreme confidence that they're going to get everything turned around and get back to division championships or division titles and AFC championships and Super Bowls and all of that. He has no doubt in every single person in the organization. But he's, he can't say like anybody's doing a bad job, obviously. Like he said all of the draft picks, all 6 draft picks they have worked out. They hit 6 out of 6. And of course he can't stand up there and say, well, this guy is not very good. That guy's not very good. I mean, they're still going to be on the team next year, so he can't throw them under the bus, obviously. But it's a little bit ridiculous to say that all of the rookies are playing, but all the rookies played last year too. And except for Tanner McLaughlin got in for 1 play. But all the rookies played last year. None of them were good. They didn't all just have like sudden breakout seasons this year. We've seen, unfortunately, guys like Chris Jenkins took a step back this year. Chris Jenkins is going on injured reserve, by the way. So he's going to be out for the rest of the season. Defensive tackle out of Michigan, who I think he's listed at close to 300. But if Chris Jenkins is 275, I wouldn't be surprised. He doesn't look very big. But he was one of several Bengals players who is going to be out for this game with an ankle injury. Bengals were going down with ankle injuries on that artificial turf last week that was probably frozen solid. But not only Chris Jenkins, there was also Noah Fant, who we saw hopping off the field on 1 leg. He's going to be out with an ankle. Joseph Osai is not going to play due to an ankle injury. And Charlie Jones, who got kind of rolled up during one of those returns, he hurt an ankle. Not only that, but BJ Hill also hurt his ankle, but he's questionable going into the game. PJ Jules, I think he hurt his ankle against Buffalo, who also has artificial turf in the cold weather. So you got to watch your ankles when it's cold outside on the artificial turf, apparently. But PJ Jules, is questionable. Safety, key special teamer. And T. Higgins is also questionable. He was a full participant in practice on Friday. He was questionable he was limited Wednesday and Thursday. He's questionable going into the game. Obviously, having T. Higgins would benefit the Bengals' chances of winning the game, but I don't want to see T. Higgins get injured with another concussion. He's had multiple, which is too many for T. Higgins or anybody to have. But at the moment, it doesn't really matter what the line is for this game, but I think the Bengals are favored in this game. One of the key reasons is because the Miami Dolphins are going to have a new starting quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa leads the NFL with 15 interceptions. Their coach said he hasn't been playing well enough, so they're going to bench him, and they're going to go with this rookie, Quinn Ewers, instead of Zach Wilson, he was the former number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft, right behind Trevor Lawrence in 2021, but he obviously did not live up to that draft pedigree with the New York Jets. They ran him out of town. He had some pretty ugly games in New York, and now he's backing up Tua. He said he was confused and frustrated that he didn't get the opportunity, but honestly, I think we've seen about enough of Zach Wilson, so throw in the rookie, and let's see what he can do, and hopefully for the Bengals' sake, that will equate to a good matchup for them defensively. The defense could need it. They've been playing a little bit better. They got 4 sacks against Lamar Jackson last week, even though they lost the game. They only gave up 17 points defensively. So as long as Joe Burrow can hold on to the ball, not throw interceptions, not throw pick sixes, they should be in pretty good shape against the Dolphins team. They are, at the moment, 4.5-point favorites. The Bengals are. They opened at 1.5-point favorites before it was announced that Tua was going to be benched. The Dolphins just came off an ugly loss in Pittsburgh to the Steelers in Monday Night Football. So they're coming off a short week. They have one less day to prepare for this Bengals team coming in. Bengals just played in that cold weather themselves, and now they're going to be in Miami, 80 degrees. You would think that this is going to be more the Dolphins type of climate. The Bengals aren't really used to that warm weather. We'll have to see how, some of the Bengals, they may be dealing with cramps or not used to that hot weather. So we'll see how the big offensive linemen do down in the heat, guys like Orlando Brown Jr. or Marius Mims. That 2019 game, Tyler Boyd, he was playing, a big role in that game, but he was dealing with cramps at the end of the game in his calves. That's why he had to drag himself up to the line of scrimmage to get, while the clock was running, his legs were cramping up. So players got to get their electrolytes, drink their pickle juice, all that kind of stuff. It's funny, when you look at the statistics, Joe Flacco is still the leading passer for the Bengals statistically. So I wonder if part of it is Joe Burrow doesn't want Joe Flacco to end the season as the passing leader for the Bengals. It's like, this is my team. I want to get in and get the passing touchdowns and yards and all that for this team. Jamar Chase, he's got 101 receptions. I think their Bengals record is 117. Maybe he broke that last season, but he's still got to get some more statistics. He's like number 3 in receptions. He only has 5 touchdowns, so he's got to get a lot more touchdowns to live up to his typical standard. But he's doing better than Jalen Waddle, the Dolphins' top receiving threat, now that Tyreek Hill is injured and out for the rest of the year after he dislocated his knee. The guy the Bengals really need to watch out for is Devon Achane. Almost 1,200 yards on 200 carries, 7 touchdowns rushing. But the Dolphins are not a great football team. They're 6-8 though, which is surprising. I thought they only had 5 wins, but apparently the Dolphins have 6 wins. Bengals only have 4 wins, so it's kind of surprising. I thought the Bengals were going to have a much better season than the Dolphins at the beginning of the year. I thought the Bengals would have no problem winning these last 3 games of the season against the Dolphins, Cardinals, and Browns. Now, I'm not so sure, but it's looking like the Bengals should have a good chance of winning this game. Now, it's going to be conflicting because, again, do I, as a fan, want the Bengals to win? Yes, I would like to see them win, but then, it's just going to ruin the draft position next year, but it's hard to rationalize that because they're probably not going to pick the right players anyway, so it doesn't matter. I guess we want Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase to have good games. But surprisingly, the Dolphins lead this series all time against the Bengals 17-8. So the Bengals have not had a ton of success against the Dolphins, which is a little bit surprising. I don't know why it's been so lopsided, but maybe the Bengals aren't used to the humidity. We'll have to see. Conditions, the new quarterback, Mike McDaniel, is challenging Zac Taylor for worst press conference giver as an NFL head coach. It's very difficult to listen to the Dolphins head coach give these press conferences because almost literally every 5th word out of his mouth is so it's just very grating to listen to Mike McDonald or Mike McDaniel or whatever his name is. There's so many of these guys. The coach for the Seattle Seahawks is Mike McDonald. Then there's Josh McDaniels. Then there's Mike McDaniel. It's all very confusing, these NFL. But both teams are coming off kind of embarrassing losses. Dolphins didn't get shut out. They at least got 2 garbage time touchdowns against the Steelers to make it look a little bit more respectable than what the Bengals were able to do last week. I think this is a good week for the Bengals to just get out of town, get away from Cincinnati because the fans are kind of hostile right now. I mentioned the billboard already, but they're a little bit bitter after the last game. Not only the Bengals got shut out, but then, of course, there's still a little bit of angst because the Bengals didn't clear off the seats. They left like 4 inches of snow on everybody's seats. So they had that going for them when they come in to the stadium. Hey, check this out. Your seat is covered in ice. Not that you were going to sit down that much, but it would have been nice to have the option. Or you could scrape it off yourself. No big deal. But then it was like 0 degrees outside and the team scored an equal amount of points as degrees were outside. So people are not in great spirits, let's say. And, it feels like the way this week has been going, if they had a game in Cincinnati, it would just be something even worse would happen. Like there would be some kind of a, water main break or something, and like there would be just raw sewage escaping all over Paycor Stadium during the game or something like that. Just something ridiculous would happen to make this week from hell seem even worse somehow. But Bengals are going to get away. They're going to go to South Florida for a quick trip because, again, Mike Brown is not paying for multiple nights in a expensive city like Miami. So they're going to have to get down there and get acclimated to the warm weather relatively quickly. It's going to be another test of who can tackle in this game. And neither one of these teams is great. Somehow the Dolphins as a team, I think, have more missed tackles than the Bengals, even those have missed their fair share of tackles. So can Chase Brown get going? Chase Brown really hasn't had any long runs. Like his longest run of the season is something like this, but he hasn't been able to bust off any long Devon Achane type runs. He's got 780 yards on 185 carries only 3 touchdowns for Chase Brown. But it wasn't just the players who didn't execute. I know Joe Burrow took a lot of the blame, but honestly, Joe Burrow didn't play that bad. Like, everybody was freaking out saying, oh my God, this is the worst game Joe Burrow ever played. I mean, if you actually watch the replay, there was a lot of drops. He was throwing a lot of good passes that they just didn't catch. So if they would have caught some of those passes, his stats would have looked, a lot better. There was a ball that went right past Jamar Chase's face in the end zone, and he just didn't see the ball. So he got distracted by the defender and couldn't just locate the ball in the air. If he had seen it, it would have been a touchdown. Perfect pass from Joe Burrow. So he wasn't that far off, but part of it was the defense for the Ravens was all over the Bengals receivers as soon as they caught the passes. Now, maybe Joe Burrow wasn't seeing the field, seeing the guys who were open, but a lot of times he was taking those short checkdowns, and then there would be 3 or 4 Ravens right there ready to hit the guy. That's partly, not giving Joe Burrow a lot of good options, perhaps by the offensive coaching staff, and maybe a little bit of predictability by the Bengals offense. So if the Dolphins have done their homework, we'll have to see if they come out with a game plan. The Ravens, they play the Bengals twice a year. They've kind of diagnosed exactly how to play the Bengals offense by point. So maybe they just knew the answers to the test better than a typical team might. We'll have to see if the Dolphins are able to duplicate the same strategy the Ravens had last week, because whatever the Ravens were doing last week worked. Like Jamar Chase said, sometimes you just get your ass whipped in the NFL, and if you've got the same, not everybody has a Kyle Hamilton like the Ravens have, so not everybody has a Roquan Smith like the Ravens do. So the Dolphins can't necessarily do the exact same thing, but they've got players who can make plays, no doubt. They're better than the Bengals defense, I'll give them that much. But as optimistic as I am, there's only one thing that makes me think the Bengals are going to lose this game. You know why? It's because of who is announcing this game. Yes, that's right. It is another CBS game with Spero, Dedes, and Adam Archuleta with a Dede Kickabwala on the sidelines. They are like the kiss of death for the Bengals. Every game that they have called for the Bengals this year, they have lost in miserable fashion. They lost to the Jets. They lost to the Bears in comical last-second, unbelievable ways. Then they lost in a shutout to the Ravens with Spero Dedes calling that game. So I am not optimistic for another Spero Dedes, Adam Archuleta, Cincinnati Bengals game in Miami. I don't know what is going to happen in this game. It's probably going to be insane, but the Bengals are most likely going to lose. So, despite what the odds makers say, I'm going to go, even with Quinn Ewers, who's probably not that good, getting his first start in the NFL. Bengals are known for making guys look like Hall of Famers in their first start in the NFL, i.e. Mike White. Oh, and by the way, Shamar Stewart is coming back off of injured reserve for this game. Apparently he had a torn PCL in his knee, which is not good, but he's going to try to make a comeback before the season is up. 3 games left to go. He hasn't played very many games, hasn't gotten a sack so far in his rookie season, so he's from the Miami area. He said he drove by the stadium all the time when he was growing up, so he's going to have a bunch of people, family members down there. Hopefully he is able to have a good game in Joseph Osai's absence. They already don't have Trey Hendrickson, of course. He's already got that surgery, and he's on injured reserve. So the Bengals' defensive line is depleted. They're going to have, Cedric Johnson out there. Miles Murphy's going to have to step along with Shamar Stewart. No Chris Jenkins means maybe we'll see more McKinley Jackson alongside B.J. Hill and T.J. Slayton. But there might be some guys out there we haven't seen a whole lot of. And probably that's good. Even though Zac Taylor says they want to do everything to win and winning is the most important thing, we also need to evaluate some of these guys. I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of Tyson Anderson or Dejon Anthony or anybody else playing safety besides Geno Stone for the rest of this season, because Geno Stone's not coming back. We know that. It'll be interesting. It'll be an evaluation period. I'm not going to take this game too seriously, whether they win or lose, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to try to, enjoy it, get some entertainment value out of it, whichever way the game goes. So if they lose, that's okay. If they win, great. As long as nobody gets hurt, that's the most important thing. I don't want, any of the players to get hurt. Whatever happens with the outcome of the game is really secondary to that. So let me know what you think. Are the Bengals making the right decision by playing all their starters in these meaningless games instead of benching some of these guys? Like we see teams around the league, like the Jets are shutting down Garrett Wilson. Washington Commanders are shutting down Jaden Daniels, their starting quarterback. So some teams are making some decisions and saying, hey, we're out of it. There's no reason for this person to come back from injury unnecessarily. But the Bengals aren't like that. We'll see. But yeah, let me know what you think. Leave me your comments. Don't forget to subscribe, do all that stuff. We'll be back after the game to break it all down. Hopefully we'll be breaking down a win, but at least hopefully it's something interesting and entertaining and not just a bunch of boring cliches after a shutout embarrassment. So as long as the Bengals can put up some points, at least, that should be pretty good, right? I don't know anymore. I said being eliminated early might be a little bit of a relief, but, at that time of year, it's literally going to be the solstice, darkest time of the year. So this is like the darkest time of this Bengals season. It's been a dark one, and this is hopefully the lowest point, but maybe there's a little bit of light growing with the Zac Taylor momentum and all this stuff. So we'll see. We'll see. But until next time, I'm going to leave you with a hooday and stay hungry for more Bengal Bites.